All right, so I want to thank everybody for joining us today in a very important webinar that we are hosting today. Safebridge, under our Be Safe, we are getting the voices from our seafarers. We have James with us today. He is a seafarer from Malaysia, and he will be telling us his experience that he had on board. First things that I want to do is I want to get a feel for who we have in our audience. So if you can go ahead and if you see the window that's to your right, you can create a chat. You can let us know who you are and if you're a seafarer or if you represent one of the companies, we would like to know the demographics of our audience. James, I would like to thank you for joining us. You are the very first one that we get to interview, and I welcome you, and I want to thank you and your colleagues for everything that you have done during this pandemic. So if you can just start off by introducing yourself, let us know who you are, that would be great.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is James. I'm from Malaysia. I've been spent more than 300 days, to be exact, 308 days on board a vessel that trading in international waters. So I've been in this industry since 2006, and there are a lot of changes since I joined the career until now. And I have my COC Class 1 from New Zealand, and currently I'm a final year student of taking MBA from Middlesex University London. So I'm very happy today that I've been invited by Safebridge, especially approached by Emma and her team for being the first speaker to speak about the pandemic that seafarers are facing.
Well, thank you for bringing up this pandemic. It seems like, I mean, no one has forgotten about it, right? We're dealing with it every single day. You said you were on board for 308 days. So
Yes.
in the beginning of your contract, you thought it was going to be like a normal contract, right? You just get on.
Yes, actually, I joined, to be exact, on the 6th of December. I
Okay.
joined a vessel in Hong Kong, and supposedly I wanted to be home in May. So during that time, I was not, I didn't actually prepare much of my things, my personal belonging, I can say. So things get haywire, especially things like your toothbrush or your toothpaste, things
Yeah,
looks very simple for people ashore, but it seems quite critical items for seafarers.
of course. I can go to the grocery store if I needed to, or a corner store and pick up a tube of toothpaste. That would be very difficult for you, right? So
Yes.
when did you realize that your contract was not going to be as normal? So what was going through your head?
Because the vessel itself was trading primarily China and India. So these two places is actually the most major pandemic area, even initially started in China. So during the time when the global announcement for pandemic, our company actually already started the standard of procedure on board the vessel. So we firstly distributed the face mask. So I
Okay.
remember we had the first batch of face mask was 2,000. So the 2,000 face masks from the company, including the hand sanitizer and I think the protection suit was later part, the second batch, but the first batch was just the face mask before the global announcement. So it was it became a norm to all of us when the global announcement for the pandemic, because our company was actually practicing even before the global announcement. It was
Okay.
started in China, obviously. So the company tried to implement this as early as possible, including safety checklists, or even some emails. We have a very special emails inbox for all the crew to read.
Mhm.
The perhaps some internal news within the company, what they are doing, all in writings. So I think the company is doing a good job for updating the crew.
Okay.
So when after the pandemic, after the announcement, it was quite a haywire, but still we somehow managed to adapt that kind of common life on board the vessel.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, I completely understand. But what was the overall atmosphere? Like what was going through everybody's mind, especially yours? Thinking about your family, thinking about am I going to have, did you realize that you would have to stay on board? Like,
Initially, the company said we stopped all the crew change commands in March. So
okay.
I thought perhaps it won't be happen on me because I plan to sign off in May. So okay, no problem. You say okay, everyone due to sign off in March. It will drag 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, it will consider either crew change or no. It's like 100%
Okay.
cut off for crew change starting from March. So as it drags along 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, and it drags until to the extent that I have to admit that I really have to overdue my contract and serve until October. I just came back, I think October 9th. Yep.
Wow. Okay. So as people are getting extended, that could cause probably like a little bit of panic, I would think. To me, it would cause some panic for me. You said you didn't even have your essentials that you would plan on bringing with you. So I could just
Yes.
imagine how everybody was feeling on this. You weren't the only one. Of course, it was everybody that was dealing with it. Um, so when speaking on this, now that you know that you were extended, right? You don't know when you're going to get home. What kind of skills helped you cope dealing with this situation?
Mm, Actually, if you talk about uh, my personal view, the
Hmm.
job itself you have to carry out in a safe manner. So the
Yeah.
things is we try not to have a lot of pressure among the
Hmm.
crew. So if things are not working well, we try not to how to say verbally torture them, or maybe try to everything go with minimum requirement as safe as possible. So the things is we don't create extra jobs or long working hours because the vessel that we sail in today's world, the turnover time is quite short. Big
Hmm.
vessel like I'm sailing on a container vessel, like
Hmm.
10,000 TU or 15,000 TU. The turnover is only few hours, so it's actually quite tiring if we have
Right.
some extra jobs. Like for example, we used to face a lot of container leaking, not oil but some small beans or sands leak inside the cargo hold or on board the ship. So it's actually very troublesome for any one of us. So if there is any leaking on the beans or something, so we have to call the bosun and the deck crew and everyone have to go some cleaning, all this.
Hmm.
So and it's quite uh, it's quite pitiful for many of the crew that we cannot even go home, and when things not working as smooth as it is on board the ship, we still have to make sure the ship sail on time and
Right.
in a safe manner. So it took a lot of effort as a team.
I'm sure it did. So, team knowing how to work together as a team. It sounds like coping under pressure. It sounds like leadership skills definitely need to be taken into account during a situation like this. I mean,
Yeah.
even on shore, we're not trained to deal with pandemics, right? But I think utilizing the right type of skills, learning new skills, can actually help you get through a situation like that, like this, which is probably essential at the moment. Um, so, how can companies and people in general support the seafarers now? Um, because you're home. It took you 308 days to get home. There's people that are still on board. What are the seafarers needing?
Okay, I just want to share a personal experience here.
Yeah.
Actually, during on board the vessel, when I was in the middle of the year, this year, supposed to go home, and I had a skin infection on board the vessel. I had
Okay.
this, they call the herpes zoster, the
Yes.
syringes, the
Yep.
red one.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So I had that during on board the vessel, and I wanted to sign off, and yet things are not as per plan. So and the antiviral drugs for this
Mm-hmm.
infection is not available on board the vessel. I mean, it's not a general medicine as per the flag of the vessel, because the flag is under Hong Kong. So as per Hong Kong, the flag, the medicine itself for this uh, herpes zoster during that time was not available. It's not on the list. So whereby
Okay.
now WHO came in with a new list of medicine. That medicine actually included inside now. So during that time, I was quite mentally tortured. Not to mention physically, because
Right.
it's burnt and
Painful.
it's around my waist. Yeah, it's around my waist, and I had support by my superior. We
Yeah.
are management team, so it's quite, you can feel the teamwork. During this hard time, I can't
Mm-hmm.
sleep. It's very difficult for myself, and you can't even have a good position of sleeping, and yet you still have to perform your duties as per supposed to be on board the ship.
Right.
So it's quite mentally torture during that time. So I believe you need to have people that support you, not only for your work, but maybe something that out of your work hours. It's very important during on board the vessel.
Mhm. Now, I do want to open up this because I do see some seafarers that are in the audience. I do want to open up that question um, to you guys. You can go ahead and type your answer in there so we could try and get a feeling of what kind of support seafarers are needing. Because we do need to understand the makeup of the seafarer now. Because of the pandemic, the needs are changing. The requirements are changing to how this seafarer can successfully do their job. We need to make sure they're able to cope under pressure. We need to make sure that leaders are trained, right? Would you agree with that, James? If leaders are trained to be supportive, to keep the topics that are taboo open.
Yes, yes, actually, if you talk about the support from the company itself, give a few good example. Of course, it's only a suggestion, not mandatory point, but I would suggest this can be considered by a ship company. So the first thing I would suggest the internet, that if those ships with internet on the vessel, the company, if possible, subsidize the internet fees. The internet, perhaps for $50 or $10 per month, for the crew to have extra minutes or for their family, or they can even consider for providing allowance those who are serving overdue from their itself, which means those who are still on board more than a year. So I'm not quite sure if this is a mandatory requirement, but I have seen a lot of companies is doing that now. The extra for the crew who cannot sign off, and it's even essential, possible to update some COVID news from the company, because not all the ships have internet. They have internet is quite limited access and the data. So if the company can provide the COVID news, updated news in writing for the crew itself to paste in the notice board for daily, weekly basis, I think it can create awareness for the crew so they can know what is happening out there. And
Mm-hmm.
my company actually increased the fund from $7 to $9 now. So I think it's quite a good jump at this time, and because a lot of the food supplies or stores is increased as well, the price. So I think we do not get a lot of advantage at this, but I would suggest the company can consider the cost control for this point of view. And I'd like to add one more point that we sailors actually never really complain much until the water reaches our nose. So I hope that every complaint can be treated as an important one.
That you bring up very good point.
Very good point.
I do want to discuss the internet on board because on shore that's almost like a necessity. So if we're not supplying internet for you seafarers to stay connected with your families, maybe this is something we need to look into. Another good point that you bring up is that you can get your medication. You had shared an article the other day on LinkedIn. I follow you on LinkedIn. And there was a story regarding a seafarer who had a stroke. And they couldn't get off the vessel to get the medical attention that they needed. So this is signaling to me that this could be a possible humanitarian issue that could be brewing more than just a problem with the pandemic, right? So I see possibly companies that are wanting to do well for their seafarers, but is it more the government that is kind of blocking the situation?
Okay, we can talk, for example, for crew change. So I'll talk something similar like a crew change itself. Sometimes the company is actually assisting, very corporate for allowing the crew to go home for their individual country. And I would say my case that I have been experienced, the Myanmar country, they have been closed for uncertain times. They open for the borders. They open their borders. Sometimes they close their borders. So that maybe one of the main reason I can think is Myanmar. They might have very limited technology for the medicine control for this COVID. So to prevent the outbreak further, the most common things that they'll be doing is close the border. So I have Myanmar on board my vessel, which is serving, I think, more than 10 months on board the ship. So the company is very strange. He's actually performing very well. So the company, the chief engineer, he's actually an engine cadet. Chief engineer actually giving him a recommendation letter, so saying that he's ready for promotion. So this guy has been serving quite some time as an engine cadet. So thought during this pandemic time he can be okay. Maybe next contract promoted, not this ship, but he's to go home. He's ready to sail again next ship or next contract, but he can't because of this pandemic. So somehow he is stuck on board the ship, still serving as an engine cadet, taking the cadet allowance instead of a salary engineer. So this is a quite awkward moment. It's not the company fault, but the country is open and closed. And sometimes when the ship, for example, arrive in Singapore, we have a crew change in Singapore, direct flight to Myanmar. So when about to approaching Singapore, 1 or 2 days is the announcement from Myanmar said, okay, we close the border because of height of the numbers of the COVID patient and blah, blah, blah. So it's very certain. So leave my vessel. My reliever came 1 day before the lockdown in Malaysia, in the port. I off in the port in Malaysia, and that port closed for crew change 1 day after my reliever came on board. So, and I signed off in Singapore, the next port. So
Have there been cases Oh, sorry. Have there been cases where seafarers have signed off? So technically, their contract is ended because they've signed off, and then they weren't able to actually get home, and they would have to go back on board.
Actually, we do because the vessel we are trading in China. So we have a few potential Chinese crew from China itself. So what the company is doing now, we have a crew change in China. So for the country like China, they allow crew change for their own people. So the company try to have a crew change with the Chinese crew on board the vessel, but that doesn't really consider for other nationalities as well. So the company actually I've seen is quite tiring for arranging this, because you can imagine there are so many ships, so many nationalities, and the port and the country for allowing crew change is very limited. So they need a lot of studies, and this regulation change anytime. Maybe today is okay, can crew change, but when you pack your luggage, you stand at the gangway, you about to fly, then they say, oh, the border is closed. So that kind is very mental,
It's
psychologically torture.
Of course. I could just imagine, because you already have your hopes that you're going home to your family. And if you cannot get home to your family, you don't know what's happening. You've been away from them for so long. And I'm glad that you touched on this, because I do want to touch on a topic where, the maritime industry is, it's mental, I'm just going to say it, the mental health is more of a taboo when it comes to the mental health and the maritime industry. Sorry. But what we're noticing, these topics need to be brought up, because if the well-being and seafarers are not in the mental state that they need to be in, it's just not going to work. There's going to be more accidents. There's going to be possible suicide attempts, which there's reports that the suicides on vessels are actually higher than the normal, right? So we're not highlighting a topic that is brand new. It's exasperated because of this pandemic. And I do think that the companies do need to really start thinking of how we can foster an environment that kind of takes care of the mental well-being of our seafarers, and really takes notice and does whatever they can, right? I don't know if you would agree, and I don't know if the seafarers or our audience would agree. I would love to hear from you guys regarding about that as well. But I do think more needs to be done regarding the mental health issues within the maritime industry, and you're more than welcome to elaborate.
Okay, talking about this, I observed that a lot of companies, or maybe some authority, might take this as a pandemic or COVID as a something that maybe as a extra excuse for a lot of operation on board the ship. You see, the vessel, the ship operation actually is a very long time career. So a lot of things actually for this career, we are actually repeating a lot of things. The operation, we are not slowing down. We are not things that missing the ship with a little bit of practice here and there, which still follow a lot of things. So I hope the things that people, including the government itself, can really think of the seafarers at this time, with or without the COVID. We have to accept the COVID will be there. With or without the COVID, the crew change have to be done.
Correct.
But because of the how to say, because of certain parties, they might be taking this as an advantage for delaying the crew change. Because all of us, we have family, with or without COVID, we still have family. The time is still running. Our contract on board, the days are still counting. It's not to say COVID, so the calendar's extra 1 month for you. We calendar, we still have 12 months in a year. So everything, every day, people are leaving their home, leaving their family to serve on board the ship. So this is something that very, very mentally tortured if you don't really handle it properly.
So what can we do? What can we do to support this? How can companies rally together and actually foster an environment for mental well-being on board, especially now?
Given a few points just now that the company can do for their own individual companies, like the internet extra allowance or news, the crew change. The crew change news have to be in written black and white. It's not by verbal. I've seen some captain, they just speak to their crew, said, oh, sorry, I have no flight available for you, no flight tickets or no reliever, blah blah blah. It's all by verbal. Sometimes this psychology we need to have in writing, black and white, so people will feel confident to you as a master, as a leader. This is the time you need to let the people know in writing, not by verbal, because verbal people can be forgotten very fast because it's panic at this time and people are really desperate to go home. I've seen crew that they just do not want anything, even the extra allowance, they just want to go home. So I'm quite afraid that this might be a disadvantage for the new comers for this industry, example like the cadets. So I'm not quite sure. There are still people hiring cadets now. I see a lot of academies posting beautiful photos about career at sea, promoting career at sea, the fantasy, but there are many seafarers are still jobless. Experienced captain cannot join the ship because of COVID, and the cadets on board the ship wanted to sign off for promotion and they cannot sign off. So it's very complicated at this time. So I would also add a point. As long as there is no black and white in writing from perhaps IMO or even some amendments, I would say that many companies, they will not try to implement things until they reach the bottleneck, or maybe they reach until the nose that, oh, we have no choice, we have to comply this because IMO say so, or something coming out, like for example like SOLAS requirement or even IMO requirement. So as long as things are not going with writing, only webinar or only by talking, we can do 10 times of this talking, but without in writing from the top authority. Every company will try to say, oh, okay, we just wait, nobody is doing anything, this company is not doing, so we are not doing, until things something mishaps coming out. Yeah.
And it kind of blows up. So you've brought 2 points that I would love to elaborate on. I do realize that a lot of companies, it's all about regulation, right? And they will only do what's minimum and what's required by the IMO, as you stated. Is this the right way? Especially now, especially with the issues that are taking place now, the way the industry is now. I do think that the companies need to get a handle on their seafarers and really do what's right by them. Because like you said, the cadets are watching. Future cadets are watching. And the maritime industry needs to understand it's not going to be the same. We have a new generation of seafarers. We have the needs of this new generation are completely different, and they are watching how everyone is reacting. The governments are going to be slow to change because honestly, with the pandemic, like I said in the beginning of this webinar, nobody was trained to handle this pandemic. So it is kind of up to us to rally around and try to come up with solutions that the government is not handling, right? I am worried about the future cadets and the cadets that we have now and the ones that are in school that are waiting to finish, because yeah, I've had many conversations on this topic, and basically what I'm hearing is they want to become a seafarer because it's in their family, or because of, you know, like you said, the glamour life at sea. But they're going to find other options. They're going to find another industry that they can move into. And if we think that autonomous ships are very far away, I think this pandemic has pretty highlighted the need for it in a way, because the less people you have on board, the less crew changes that you kind of need. And if you don't have any cadets, if you don't have anybody willing to take the position, who's going to run the ship? I mean, this is just my opinion, but I don't know if you have anything to say on that, or.
Firstly, to answer your question, you talk about the regulations. Is it supposed to be that way? Actually, if we talk about this, we track back to the purpose of IMO, the resolution, including the regulation from SOLAS, ISM code, and all the necessary code. So what is this code is doing about? Because, for example, like ISM code, in ISM code came out before ISM code, every ships, they have their own practice. You know, they have a checklist. They don't have a proper checklist or standardized checklist. Every ship you join with different checklists, or some of the seafarers, they sail 1 year, they sail with 5 companies, different ships, different ship management, ship owners. So they just freelance, and they have to adapt with different checklists or practice before the ISM. So IMO came out with a code. So everybody, regardless, they have a minimum requirement to follow this. Of course, you can have extra blah, blah, blah for extra checklist, but there is a very minimum requirement, mandatory to comply. So including ACDIS itself, we talk about ACDIS. So when ACDIS enforced, they have a grace period of time, you see. So if without this requirement, everyone will be delaying, or maybe perhaps have no ACDIS at all. So no electronic charge, because no IMO, no code, nobody is talking about this. So okay, we just we have been doing, maybe some companies quite traditional, they say okay, we have been doing without electronic charge for the past 50 years. So why we need electronic charge? So without the code is enforced, some company they drag until the last moment, maybe have the grace period, end of the grace period. So every ship's ship owner or ship management under this company, they try to implement in a short time, go for intensive training, or maybe a lot of buying this equipment in a short time to fix, just to comply with the code. So I'm not in a position to suggest a lot of things to the IMO, but I would say that with crew change, there are things like MLC code can enhance more. Talk about the crew change, because in the current MLC code itself, we actually extended the contract. So a lot of flag state company, depending on the flag of your vessel, they have been okay. You can extend your license, you can extend your contract on the ships. For example, like even New Zealand, the license that I'm holding, they can extend even without go for training at this time. So you can renew or extend your license, but I think it's quite how to say, it's quite not really quite practical for this. So if you read the regulation from IMSA, the Australia Maritime Authority, they actually came with very strict rules, how many months the crew have to be on board, regardless of when, who they are, or what rank, or how long they serve. They, at this moment, they have to go. So of course, that is in the context of Australian waters and the port. But if many companies or many authority can really look into this kind of example, I believe we can really make into another regulation for IMO to comply for not for this pandemic or maybe future. If there's a pandemic, who knows?
One last before we open it up to the audience questions. What was the first thing that you did when you got home? Was there like a specific food that you've missed so much, or a TV show? How did it feel to actually get off, however you got home, and do what you wanted to do?
The first thing is when I got home, I actually went home from Singapore. So in Singapore itself, you don't really have a lot of checks. You only check your passport, temperature, and you just go. You do not have any proper swab test. So sorry to say, with positive or negative, you still have to fly. You still have to leave Singapore. So for Singapore practice, I'm not sure now because things regulation they change very rapidly. So I would say that during my time, which is a month ago, the practice is they pick up from the ship, they put you directly to the airport, and you take the nearest, the closest flight as per your arranged flight. Fly back to like me, fly back to Penang, my hometown, and you'll get your swab test. Like for my country, regardless where you came, the moment you touch Malaysia, regardless of who you are, you have to do the swab test through the nose. So I did the swab test, and it was a first time experience. The plane is almost empty, and I still got charges for excess luggage. I did actually challenge them. I say, why you have extra excess luggage charges? The plane is almost empty. And yeah, you have to follow the standard of procedure. So you can imagine the plane, one row, only I'm alone. Either you sit on the left side of the window or the right side of the window. So each row, only one person. So when you reach the airport, it's actually not a commercial place anymore like it used to be. Airport is selling things or wine or cigarettes or anything. It's not anymore. You can feel like it's like a hospital with military control. So we have some military and some doctors, medical doctors. The moment you come down, you have to go to the designated area for master, for taking your swab test, and then directly to the hotel. So this time I came back, I don't really feel I'm back because you have to went through all the quarantine, 14 days quarantine procedure. You just stay in a hotel, and the moment you come back, a lot of procedure again. Now in the country they have a restricted movement. You cannot go anywhere. You have to scan everywhere you go. So I just have to accept this is the
So you
quite norm.
you left one Malaysia and you came back to another. So and that's kind of, I didn't think about that. What happens when you come back? You left the place. You could go move freely. You could go to whatever restaurant you wanted. You can be with however many people you wanted to be with, and now you come home and there you have it. You can't do the things that you used to do. And thank you for opening my eyes to that, because that's definitely another issue that probably needs to be taken care of, especially with, again, the mental health well-being. It doesn't stop when you come off board. There should be support when you are home as well. Thank you for that. I do want to open up the questions from the audience. If we can
I've seen a few questions there. I thought I would like to answer them.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, talk about the food supply. So we try to keep the food fresh. So the thing is, for the food, I'm not quite sure is this person asking Tan is he or she a seafarer or no? Because if it's a seafarer, I don't think he or she will ask this question. So I'll just answer it in a layman term. So for ship, we wanted to request for the food. First, we have to see the trading area, which means how many days are we away from one port to another port. Maybe a month, or maybe 2 months, or maybe a week. So we try to keep the food as fresh as possible. So like for my case, my vessel is trading China. We go Hong Kong, Shanghai, then back to Singapore, then to Malaysia, then we go Sri Lanka, we go India, so and back again. So basically it's quite near to each of the port. Perhaps the longest is 3 days. So yeah, we have very big cold room to store all the foods in there. We segregate, of course, the vegetable rooms, the fish room, meat room, and all the necessary room, because different food with different temperature. Some you need to be a frozen room, and some just cold, just dry. Yep. So I hope I answered this Tan question for this one. And we actually fix some pot with food, like maybe Singapore. Sometimes we take vegetable from Singapore. Sometimes we take from Hong Kong or Shanghai. It's not fixed, but we try to find the minimum pay expenses
Mhm.
and with better quality. Yep.
Okay. Thank you for answering that question. We do have a question from Yanis, and it says, would you say that more access to communication with friends and family ashore would help seafarers cope with the stress of the prolonged stay on board?
For this case, I think it actually does give psychologically, actually it does help. Why? Because when the ships during also happen in March, we have a layby, which means the ship is stop operation. The reason is our ship is quite old, so the company not trying to change the route of our service. We are from China to India and passing Singapore. But because of India during that time, they have a lockdown, so they lock the whole country, including the ports, the terminal. So the ships cannot go to India. But because the ship is old, so most of the practice, if we stop India, we will go somewhere else, divert to Australia or New Zealand or maybe nearby, Philippines or where. But no, the company insists putting us lay-by, which means out of service. So when we lay-by, we try to drop the anchor near to the shore, so every one of us can enjoy the internet and phone coverage with a better signal to talk to their families, and they actually very happy and looking forward to that time. And when we about to phase in again the service, when India is open back, so everyone is quite energetic to work again. And actually that does really helps a lot psychology. It might sound very small impact to people in the office, but actually it's a quite huge contribution for those on board the ship.
I could imagine. I'm the people that are in the I'm asking for Egle and those running the show in the background. Do we have any more questions? And we have a question, another one from Yanis.
Yes.
Having gone through all this experience now, what are your future plans? Will you consider going back on board with this uncertainty?
If you're looking at this time, um, I would suggest that every one of us try to do things that we are familiar with. I wanted to change my career. I wanted to flip because of doing the MBA now. I wanted to work ashore, but I don't think this is the right time.
Yeah.
Not to say myself, but any one of us, because a lot of people are being unemployed because of retrenchment from a lot of companies. So touch wood for seafaring, maritime industry is quite still not affected that much, but I think the demand is still there. So I will go back again, perhaps during Christmas time or maybe after Christmas. I wouldn't know. And I did decided I actually renewing my license now. It's already 5 years. I had this license 5 years ago in New Zealand, so it's time's up for me to renew now and back to the ship again for perhaps 1 or 2 years. I don't know.
For 1 or 2 years, right? Oh no,
I mean,
don't put that in the
not
universe.
on the ship 1 or 2 years, but
Oh, for
within.
another 1 or 2 years, you'll do this.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
We have a question from Sujit. Uh, what is the question you asked yourself and the maximum number?
I don't understand what do you mean by the maximum number.
Sujit, if you could go ahead and clarify in your question, we will get back to your question after we answer the next one. So if you can just clarify for us what you're meaning so he can answer your question, okay? We have from Therese, how has your extended time on board affected your studies?
Okay, I'll have to honestly reply this one. I'm not very good in studying. I'm always the borderline, and including this time. So when I took this MBA, actually, it's from someone else. This guy, he was a former chief officer in Maersk Line. He is working ashore now. He's working for Shell, Malaysia, and he took this MBA. So I'm actually always have the habit went through people's LinkedIn, not to see their job only. I even went through their education, not to judge them, but maybe something that caught my attention. So I went through his MBA. I see, oh, shipping logistic. I think this is something that quite close to what I'm doing now. So I went through that university, and it's actually an online MBA, and it actually came out in IMO newsletter. So I think it's IMO is recognized this thing. So I thought, okay, why not I study MBA, which is recognized by IMO, and it's based in UK, and it's online. So basically, it's a specialized specially cater for people working on a ship. So what I do is I always trying to survive, passing the border mark, not to be very good, but at least I didn't lose any credits and still keep going on. So it just keep my mind active. I don't really talk about ship anymore, ship operation, it's everything about ship. But now I try to shift my mind. When I close my door in my room, in my cabin, I study the MBA, very focusing on commercial part, which the MBA is required, this one. So I think it's making me quite a all-rounder in terms of conversation or to anyone within the industry.
That's an amazing thing that you're doing. And let's see, do we have any more questions? So how do you think, so we have a question from Mita. How do you think that we can influence regulatory bodies to act faster and amend the regulations to best accommodate the best interests of the seafarers? Do you believe that seafarers have the ability and the strength to join voices and initiate change?
For this case, it's actually, honestly speaking, based on my personal view, I think it's quite hard because even IMO Secretary General Katak Lim also voicing out about the seafarers' welfare. So it seems like things are not under control in many terms internationally. So I would say that company itself have to be initiative for doing this, because I'm not quite sure how many seafarers, former seafarers, working on board before that is still working in the office. So I would say that those working in office, they might not be facing pandemic, because work on board the ship, there are two types of people. One type, no accident, no pandemic, nothing, very smooth, 6 months, go home. And another type is you have accident. So you do accident report, you expose with people fighting, you expose with people stealing money on the ship, you expose with many accidents, not by ship, but internal politics and all these things. So that kind of environment you do have as well. So there are some seafarers sail for many long time with everything went smooth. So when they go to office, they are quite hard to imagine the things that we are facing now. Even we are expressing ourselves, it doesn't make much impact to the people working in office. You know, it's very strange when these seafarers, they were part of us, used to be, when they start to work in office, they will somehow like separating us, and they are like talking about them and us. it, because sometimes I do not understand, does the company really stand at our side, or the seafarer, the former seafarer, the manager or director, is it standing our side or standing the other side? You see, because we seafarers, we really have to support each other, hand in hand together. So I hope this can be done internally before waiting for some changes globally. I think it takes time for this.
I think we have some more questions that are coming through. Did you have anyone on board who suffered not only from stress, but went into some type of depression?
The ship that I sail, we have 4 or 5 nationalities. I can say that everyone is quite coping well with them emotionally, mentally, because I don't see any fighting on board the ship during that time. And most of them, I heard, I don't really witness myself, I heard from others, they does drinking during night time, because my ship is not a dry ship, so we still have a control alcohol policy in the company. So some people, they drink, they sing song, you know, you try many ways to express themselves. So we don't really make gathering that we used to be. You know, on the ship we have party and all this, but we do not do that anymore because of the pandemic. We try to practice the same on board the ship. We isolate, but there are few certain very close crew. They are just in the rooms. They just sing song, or perhaps the same countryman, same nationality. They just happy to be together. So I think that is how they try to ease the mental torture part. Yeah, everyone have their own way. I hope things everyone they will find their own way for this. Yeah.
Well, of course, but you know that brings up another issue, and we actually have a question about a question about the alcohol use that's on board. Sometimes seafarers drink alcohol in order to relax and don't feel stress. Kind of entertainment when got shore pass. How about consequences of alcohol on board? Well, we all know um, alcohol use and a heightened alcohol use, especially in stressful situations, um, can depression could trigger the alcohol use, or this is how they think that they need to cope. Um, in my opinion, I think if there were support and some type of training where we can um, for people on board to be able to recognize certain triggers and recognize certain behaviors so that they could probably help these people because something might be going on. I don't know if you would agree, James, but yes, I know even people on shore, whenever they have alcohol, they'll use it to get them through certain situations, and it causes more harm than good. So I don't know what your thoughts would be on that.
I've sailed with ship totally dry. They are manned with Muslim company. I've sailed with ships that is not dry but controlled. So I would say that regardless of religion or practice, control should be there. But some companies try to avoid these unnecessary consequences. They just totally dry. So it depends quite individual for each person perspective. But for company like us, we really try to control the volume. In fact, we have a policy in each of their cabin. Even we in the daily meeting, we try to emphasize this, that how many volume they can drink and how much they can drink and how many hours before the duties they can drink.
Oh,
So
okay.
we do not have wine. We do not have we actually only have beer on board the ship. So we try to avoid any other kind of alcohol besides the beer.
Okay.
So yeah, everyone is trying to control, but I think it might turns out quite well for the past few ships that have been worked before.
Okay. Do we have any? So, Therese, given that some ports, flags, and companies really are being too slow to act on crew change, is it time for seafarers to strike or for P&I clubs to withdraw their services? This is a huge topic. Let's think about it. If seafarers strike, what happens, right? Countries wouldn't get their produce, countries wouldn't get their medications, medical supplies. I mean, is this what it needs to take whenever for governments to open their eyes to the issue? Let's not be
Uh,
on time.
I would say, I mean, honestly speaking, I would say that we seafarers, by nature, we are quite follow the regulation because our
Okay.
job by nature. So it's very hard to find any seafarers that very how to say, you don't follow the rules, try to be a troublemaker. No, because seafarers, you know, when you're in the airport itself, you can witness a seafarer by the way how they behave.
Yeah.
Because seafarers on the ship, even near the ship, they have a lot of regulation. So by nature, we do not have that kind of intention to strike. And I don't think it is quite a useful way of approaching this. Because when you strike, it's not only the seafarers, you see, it's certainly bigger than things about crew change. So we do not want this to happen globally.
Right.
Yeah. So anything else? I see the quite some similar question here.
Was off. I forgot to turn it back on.
No
Um,
problem.
Kyle asked, how did you cope with the daily fatigue of being stuck on board? And how did you and your fellow seafarers work together to keep each other motivated or encouraged?
Okay, the first thing is we actually the seafarers, we by nature we are quite afraid of a lot of things. You might think the seafarers are quite brave. You watch some cartoons, some Popeye Sailor Man like a hero, but actually seafarers we are actually quite afraid of many things, including this pandemic. So what we are doing now as a leader, we try to keep a lot of PPE, safety. I mean the protection, personal protection equipment, give it to them as more as possible so they'll feel quite secure in a way. Like example, like for myself, we give a lot of face masks. So or maybe we designated an area to give them the face mask. So when they work, not only face masks, I mean some other thing including. So when they work, they will feel the management on the ship actually does really consider a lot of things. It might sound very tiny, minor things for the management to do things. I'm not talking about the office management. The ship management itself play a very big role. So when we work together, we give meetings, we talk about the pandemic. I remember the chief engineer before I sign off in India. That was the last India port I sailed before I went home. So the chief engineer told something that is quite touching actually. He said that all of us will be wearing the suit not all. I mean, those who are working on deck, because the white suits is quite limited. So those who work on deck in the port with the suits with this protection, we need to wear, because if we get infected by the COVID, at least we are not feeling sorry for ourselves or even our family, because we did our best. You see, that kind of message is actually quite pathetic. It's quite sad when you listen to it. You feel like you are end of the world. You requested to go home, you cannot go home, and yet you still have to wear this kind of very uncomfortable suit. You still have to work just to keep the ship running on time. You cannot be late, because we're facing a lot of argument with the terminal. And I don't think they don't really consider about us. You see, we have been working on the ship for 10 months. Like myself, is 10 months is considered very less. I'm considered one of the earliest guy to went home. So you can imagine people serving 400 days or 450 days, and they don't really interview like me now. I'm only 300, so maybe those who are watching this video, they are serving longer than me, especially on board my ship. They'll be thinking this is a joke, because like, oh, you see, I'm still 450 days and I don't even get interviewed. And James only 300 days and he's already in the media.
Oh no. Well, we would love to interview as many seafarers as we can. So if you know anybody who would like to do that, do we have any questions? Any more questions from the audience? Yep, it looks like we do not. All right, I want to thank everybody for joining. This has been a very insightful conversation that I've had with James, and I appreciate James for you taking the time out to do this with me. Ever since this pandemic has kind of highlighted certain issues, key issues that we are facing within the industry, I've made it kind of a vow to try and advocate as much as possible for our seafarers. And I really do mean what I say when I would like to speak as many seafarers as we can. Maybe we can all together on shore and on the vessels try and make change for the future cadets and the cadets that are graduating now. I would like to thank everybody and have a great day.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.